So I'm James McQuivey, Research Director at Forrester Research. The team that I direct is called the Future of Work team. And as weird as this sounds, it's a team that has existed for in an amorphous shape for several years at Forrester, but it's only 2.5 years ago that we sat down and we said we need to pull all of our experts who do our EX index research, our automation and the future of work research into a single team. So it's very interesting. What used to be a diffuse organization inside of Forrester, we pulled into a single team. And we did this, I'm telling you this story for a reason, we did this in December of 2019. Okay, this was an amazing time to make that decision, and not a happy one, obviously, for what happened next. But what I'm going to describe for you today is that when we sat in that room together, we brought our team in from all their different places, and we said, if we're going to describe what's going to happen to the future of work over the next 5 to 10 years, and we're going to make this relevant for that period, what can we describe for people that will help them understand the context in which all of the things that we've been talking about here today are going to occur? And so what I want to do is give you that context, and then we're going to dive into what we've already learned in the first 2 years of this decade as a result of starting from this point of context. So, as it says in very large letters up here, 4 shocks assault your current workforce strategy. Now, I'm going to describe 4 things that when we sat in that room together in December, whiteboards, all of those things of 2019, we said, if we had to boil down the forces, no, forces isn't the right word. Is it the issues? No, that's not even the right word. We chose shocks because we're describing an energy state. You have a certain amount of energy that you're bringing to your workforce strategy. And coming at perhaps right angles to the direction that you're trying to move with the energy that you have, there are these things, these shocks. Shock waves, you might describe them. If I get too much into the metaphor, I'll lose you, I'll lose my team when I start talking like this. But let me just hit the 4 things, and hopefully you'll see why we think these things mattered in December 2019 and continue to matter now. The first one was systemic risk. And when we described this at the time, we said, let's make sure everyone understands that these are the things that are outside of your span of control, even outside of the span of control of your industry. You don't have power to shape these or direct these. All you can do is understand them, sometimes see them coming, plan for them, prepare for them, and then respond to them. And we were talking about geopolitical forces. We're talking about supply chain issues. We're talking about natural disasters. And yes, we were talking then about pandemics. Well, it turned out that one seems to be the one that everyone is focused on right now. But please, you understand, this is not the only one we're dealing with right now. So even once we learn to deal with the endemic nature of this particular pandemic, we still have shock after shock after shock coming. So we put that one first because it kind of sets the table on which the rest of the meal is going to be consumed. Second, we put robots and automation. Robots, automation, AI comes in there because the skills you need as an organization in order to adapt to these things, plan for them, and actively shape how you do them. That will be fundamental to the success in everything we're going to talk about here in this session, everything, actually, that Eightfold is trying to accomplish. Third one in our 4 shocks, employee data. This will be so important to the next 25 minutes that we have together. Finally, employee power. Now, when we talk about employee power, one of the things that we want to make sure we do is convey that this is not simply about unionization, although that matters. It's not simply about employees protesting because of a decision that an organization made, although that happens. It's not even just about going on social media and expressing disapproval of the things that are happening in the organization or that leadership did or did not say, although that happens. Employee power is fundamentally about information, access to it, and the ability to then communicate employee feeling, sentiment inside the walls of the organization as well as outside, all of which is accelerated by technology. So when we put these 4 things together, we said, okay, from 2020 to 2030, we're going to focus on the way these things will shape how you respond in your workforce strategy. The challenge here is that when we walk into a C-suite and we're going to talk to executives about these 4 things, it is incredibly difficult to get them to care. Because they'll say, well, yeah, I get it. It's all important. Yeah, sure. But I don't have to do anything today about it, right? And I'll be honest, in 2019, when we sat down and we said, these are the things we want to communicate, we expected we would take 5 years just to persuade people that these were fundamental and important. And then the pandemic happened. And suddenly, all 4 of these things mattered like that, immediately. And suddenly everybody cared, and executives were asking us, what are we going to do? We need to rethink employee experience. We need to rethink our workforce strategy. And then, as the pandemic started to wane, they went back to, oh, yeah, that's kind of important. We'll make sure to invest in that. So, instead, what we get from many, many executives, not all of them, but many, is, evidently the slides have changed order. We get this. This awareness, 11.5 million jobs were open or vacant, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics in the United States in March, and just 6 million people were unemployed. That gap, that's what motivates people to get on the phone or on Zoom and contact us and say, what do I do? And we try to tell the story of the 4 shocks that are going to shape the workforce. And they say, yeah, okay, I get it, but I've got to figure out how to hire people. What can I do? And when we show them the actual statistics of this, it doesn't make it feel better than that 1-month snapshot that I just gave you. What you're looking at here is the dark line. I love the size of this thing. This is amazing. You're looking at a dark line, which is unemployment, which of course went through this incredible shock during the pandemic and then has been steadily falling since. Vacancies, on the other hand, flat, pandemic dips a little bit, and then continuing. This gap between vacancies and the unemployment, it's wide and it's continuing to grow. Now, for those of you who didn't do macroeconomics in school, let me just tell you, this space here, where the dark line and the light line are just a little bit apart, that is healthy. That's an economy that can grow. There's someone in the economy who has the optimism to believe that if they created this new job, someone would step up. Someone would choose to fill that role, acquire those skills if needed. And that is what grows the economy. This is the source of inflation, rapid turnover. We cannot sustain this very long. That's why we're getting the phone calls from the executives. So I'm just letting you in on a little secret. I use this healthy tension as a way to say to people, if this is the average of what's happening, and this is the gap in the market, would you rather be the company that just follows the market and suffers this gap, or would you like to be the company that knows how to be on the positive side of that curve? Investing in your people, the ones you already have and the ones you're going to have next, so that as you face these 4 shocks that I'm writing about and talking about, you can say, well, I understand that this gap is affecting the market in general, but it's not harming us because we've made the right investment in our people, guided by the right intelligence, the right knowledge that we need to have. Now, one of the things that happens, if you imagine that C-suite sitting together and having this panicked conversation about talent, looking at numbers like this and getting nervous, one of the things that happens is they turn to whoever's in charge of HR, the CHRO, the CPO, and they say, what are you going to do? And if you look at the results from our survey last year of over 700 HR executives in the United States, it turns out that many of them are going to invest in more HR technology. Now, this comes along with some other things related to are you going to do this and add new tools, or are you just going to expand the functionality of tools you already have? Or in some cases, some people are actually going to consolidate the tools that they have available to them. But 41% are saying, no, we're going to increase. And this is all happening in a global market where global human resource technology is expected to grow at about a 6% compound annual growth rate until 2028 to becoming a $36 billion market. And you know what's so hard about this number? It's really hard to know what to include in it. And it's really hard to measure it. Because a lot of these categorical tools, which we used to be able to say, oh, that's payroll, that's all of our platforms for onboarding people, for making sure we have our learning management in place, all of those things are expanding. and they're colliding with each other in the market. People are adding point solutions. We're seeing the emergence of categories here. This figure is made by, and actually very, very consistent with the sessions that we were just having on diversity, equity, and inclusion. I'm happy to report that I'm only up on stage here because our principal analyst, Betsy Summers, who developed all of this research, decided to have a wonderful new child last month and is taking her appropriate time away and will absolutely have her full position at full pay when she comes back. So this is her thought, and what I love about the way she's described this is it's almost like these clouds of new point solutions are condensing from the ether. It's like, we've had all these tracking tools for tracking people before, but now it's becoming more of a candidate relationship management platform. It's not just about that pipeline from contact to hire or no hire. It's about establishing relationships. It's not just about having training platforms that people train using to check the box on certain competencies that we've decided they need to have. It's actually a learning experience platform. You see these things starting to evolve, their functionality, continuous performance development, employee experience management platforms, so that not only does the organization have more ability to manage the talent side of its business, but actually the talent itself is part of these tools. Every single one of these things that's emerging in this space has an equivalent side where the candidate, not even a candidate, but the network participant that we're trying to build a relationship with outside of the organization, or obviously talent in the organization, also has access to the same tools, also participates, so that you have two sides coming together through these tools, and that's what's so powerful. But here we're going to talk about this special blue cloud, which I made a little bit bigger than normal to illustrate that it is growing very, very rapidly. It's emerging very, very strongly, and that's what we're going to talk about, is this category, which we might have said, how many of you have ever used the word skills ontologies in just casual conversation? Okay, yes, I like you already. Almost nobody does, though. And what we're starting to see is people thinking about moving beyond just thinking of skills graphs or skills ontologies to reassessing their entire talent intelligence approach. And this is what's so interesting to us as well, because similar to the other categories that are emerging here, we're looking at a tool that is not just for, let me carve out a spot. Okay, this piece of tape, this is my executive spot. I'm going to be the executive when I'm here. The executive, what tools are we going to invest in order to solve this talent problem? Okay, what are we doing for us, our needs, the business? Now I'm going to move over here. Let's see if I get, okay, this piece of tape. There it is. This piece of tape will be I'm the employee, I'm the candidate, I'm the human on the other end of these tools. Now it used to be that for me to see through to the executive, I was basically giving them all kinds of data and information, logging into systems and tools, and then wondering what happens with that information and have no idea. Remember I said one of our 4 shocks is employee data? That's generally how employees experience employee data. It's basically siphoned up. They never understand what sense is made of it, and often that's because there is no sense that's made of it. The executive, meanwhile, over here on this piece of tape, is seeing poorly formed reports, static reports, and then never communicating back to the people the value of that data. What we're seeing in the space of categories that are emerging is finally going to eliminate the idea that there's no transparency between the executive and the worker. So it'll be not just about them and me, it'll be about us here in the middle. And that's what these tools are going to be so brilliant at. So let's talk a little bit about talent intelligence, because first of all, you've already heard this term today. You're going to hopefully use this term for many, many years to come. We're kind of stuck on this term because it means so many different things to different people in the conversations we're having. There's a tension in the meaning of talent intelligence. So is talent intelligence data and insights about the aggregate external talent market that you can use about your industry, your geography? Okay, that sounds pretty useful. How about data about potential workers, candidates, that organizations can use to inform their hiring process? Well, yeah, that's useful too. How about an understanding of, now imagine this, how current employees experience their daily work and career journeys? And I put daily work and career journeys on there for a reason. Talent intelligence, in our opinion, is all of these things. And it needs to be threaded together. And there needs to be a single strategy for pulling all of these things through to be a meaningful experience for the executive and the worker. But what's happening right now is a lot of people are talking about talent intelligence, and they're proposing we have a platform for talent intelligence. And they're describing it as if, well, what it should do or what it can do depends on what you're expecting to do with it. So if you are only expecting to use a talent intelligence platform to recruit people, then that's all you're going to expect. That's all you're going to use. And you think, yeah, I've got a talent intelligence platform, and you're going to miss all of the value. So what I want to do is define the value. I'll defend it too. Yeah, I'll define and defend the value of having a talent intelligence platform approach, as per Betsy Summers, my wonderful colleague. Let's start with a slide here that illustrates these different layers of what talent intelligence could mean. It starts with external data down here. It starts with being able to say, yeah, knowing what's happening in the market, getting screen scrapes from job listings around the world so that we have a sense of what people are looking for, as well as obviously profile data as well. External data is great. Now let's move that into the acquisition phase, which is where most people are. When most people are talking about talent intelligence today, they're talking about understanding the skills, the job history and experience, and the past and current performance related to talent acquisition, and then bringing people on, training them, and having them engage in learning management and experience, and then gradually moving this way into performance management and development, but mostly with an onboarding perspective today. Where this needs to go next for us to fulfill the promise that I'm up here to talk about is all the way across the board. We need to have, I like this, I feel like I'm being a magician, it's like all the way across the board. Their aptitude and their potential, their preferences and personality, their aspirations, their values, some of these things explicitly collected. I'm sorry, you're trying to take pictures and I keep walking in front of it. Some of these things explicitly expressed, but that takes time. Other things inferred from the value extracted from the network. And in all of this, with an awareness that we describe employee data as a shock because it can potentially throw you completely off course if you're not careful. It can cause a lot of harm. So what we want to do is make sure that we have a purpose in doing all of these things, in collecting this kind of data, in assigning, sometimes imputing values for each of these things. Because if we don't have a purpose, first of all, we'll waste our time. We'll collect data that we won't use, and everyone will get discouraged and they'll stop doing it. Or they'll collect data and misuse it, according to some of the biases we've been discussing in prior sessions, or just some of the flaws of our prior organizational approaches. So let me come back to these 7 HR and talent functions, if we've laid them out across here, and describe where we want both sides of the equation. The executive, I keep missing my piece of tape. The executive gets value out of this, and the individual employee gets value out of this as well. I'm going to first apologize. There will be a lot of text on this screen, and I'm not expecting you to read it all. But I do want you to understand that there's a pattern that's going to evolve. And when we're done with all the text on the slide, I'm going to describe for you the underlying theme that runs across all 7 of these things. So first, back to talent acquisition. When we are doing this correctly, of course we have better skill-based candidate matching. We have talent pool identification where we can identify talent pools based on what they're actually capable of, not based on something we wrote down in an Excel spreadsheet 5 years ago about the requirements necessary for that particular job. We will be uncovering hidden talent. And as was already mentioned earlier today, that can be talent we already have, of course, as well as in a talent acquisition scenario. So in learning management and experience, we're going to have data that will illuminate skills as a landscape in the organization. Not just these are the competencies we desire, are we meeting them, but what else do we have that we didn't realize explicitly are contributing to the value that people are creating in these roles? This will inform skills gaps and opportunities, and convert those gaps to opportunities personally. Improving learning opportunity recommendations for the organization and the individual. In performance management and development, we're going to have personalized development strategies. Think about that. I'm going to keep making fun of these spreadsheets that have the competencies that we laid out before and said, oh, 6 years ago, this job had these requirements. Do you meet these requirements? Yes or no? There's your performance management plan right there. No, we're going to humanize that by having the system understand you, your unique set of capabilities. Yes, against benchmarks that we've set, but also open to the possibility that there are things we didn't know to need that you provide, and rewarding you for providing them. That makes it more personal and more human, and that's critical. All the while reducing the bias and the subjectivity that comes from saying, well, these are the expectations that I have because of my background and my knowledge, and yes, my biases. In career management and mobility, the whole transparency that we're going to enable to career pathing. You remember, well, some of you, you're old enough like me, you know what it was like when you first join a largish organization and you say, well, I want to know what paths there might be available to me in the organization. And they say, oh, we got to go talk to so-and-so and maybe learn more about this. And you spend all of your personal energy looking for those opportunities and talking to people and interviewing people and finding out that you still only have a partial sense of what possible paths might be available to you. If we've got people coming in, come on in and sit down. Sorry, we may have, you probably went long in your other session, and I feel bad that you missed like some really amazing stuff. The powerful thing about this is the acceleration of talent mobility. And I know I've talked to enough executives in these situations who feel a little bit like, but you're telling me I'm going to accelerate the rate at which people now qualify to leave the job that we brought them in for. And the answer is yes, yes, yes. That is exactly what we want. Because if you're the kind of organization that can rapidly qualify people to move into more complicated, more skills-based roles, then you are going to be the kind of organization that draws people in. They're going to know, I need to go there because that organization pulls me up, lifts me up. All right, in engagement management. Now, I'm going to apologize and sort of humbly admit that all of the engagement research that we do for clients is at a macro or an aggregate level. We'll survey hundreds, maybe thousands of employees. We'll try to understand in aggregate from the list of 30 drivers that we typically see in our EX experience or index research, which ones are driving people the most. And then we come to your organization and we say, here's how you benchmark against others, maybe in your industry. It's very, very valuable. It's very useful. But if you're the individual in that organization, you've been there where you realize, actually, I don't fit that. That isn't what drives me. That isn't why I get up in the morning thinking about what I can do at work. So having individual engagement drivers is where this is going to lead us when we have a talent intelligence platform, which allows you to personalize actions and recommendations at all levels. So at all levels. So here, individual employee, and I have the executives over there, so let me put management right here in the middle. If I'm managing the team, and I am only human, at least last time I checked, I am not in a position to have the full understanding of how to develop this person that the talent intelligence platform has. So the best thing the talent intelligence platform can do is teach me how to help them be as successful as they possibly can. What an incredible value that is to personalize to me as a manager. Don't go to some generic, well, okay, fine, go to a generic training, but don't only go to a generic training where you learn how to motivate people on your team. Understand how to motivate that person on your team based on information that they have provided, experiences that they have had at work, and what your organization has learned about how they can be more engaged and more likely to feel like they're contributing. Okay, last column. Nope, not last column. Second to last column. I really like this screen. I want this in my house. Workforce, oh, it is warm. You don't know this, but it's getting off heat. Workforce management. Okay, now we're going to abstract a little bit above the manager. This is where we're going to be able to use information to do data-informed scheduling, rostering, these kinds of things that are already happening in a point solution kind of way, but not in the context of all these other things. And obviously team composition. Team composition, which today we think of as, let's get the right team, that they're going to be together for years. No. We're talking about burstable teams. teams that are going to be together for very short periods of time, maybe even in a modular form where some sections of the team are in longer term relationships and others are coming in and out, but we still have to know how to compose that team. And then finally, workforce analytics and planning. A better informed workforce plan overall. What does that look like? That means you are saying, 5 years from now, how will the skills in our organization be different? How many of these types of roles will we have added? How many of these types of roles will have gone down? And what do we expect to do with the people in those roles? And can we use this other information to move them into some of these other roles if possible? This then accelerates your build, buy, borrow, or bot strategy to help you execute your workforce plans. All right. One of the things we're noticing as we're thinking about what kind of system would be capable of all of that, it has to have some key characteristics. These attributes that we're following, it has to be dynamic. Dynamic meaning this can't be a spreadsheet you wrote sometime and then everyone has to go onto the corporate teams to find where's that spreadsheet. It has to be explainable. We have a whole process at Forrester where we look at something called a robotics quotient, which is a company's cultural readiness to engage in more robotics and automation. And in order to do that, we have to ask people things like, do you have a sense of how automation technology is developed and whether it's good at what it does? And those organizations where people say, yes, the people leading our automation efforts in our organization, they understand what's happening and they know how to tell us what's happening. Builds trust, gives you confidence. Because otherwise, if the machine just simply spits out, here's the goals for this person, and no one really has a base layer understanding of why those would be the goals for that person, distrust, disconnect. No ability for the executive, the manager, and the employee to coalesce on that goal. So that's explainable. Extensible obviously needs to be able to reach across the whole organization. It can't just be these 7 HR functions that I put up on the screen in the last slide. It has to be all the way out to operations, all the way into finance. It has to be able to communicate with and add value to, not just simply send reports to people in marketing, in finance, all of those ways. And then open. It obviously has to be open to new sources of data, changes in the way data are coming in, changes in the kinds of partnerships that you have that would alter fundamentally the landscape of who's available in your talent pool and so on. Now, these 4 things as attributes, dynamic, explainable, extensible, and open, none of it can happen without the not-so-secret ingredient of AI. AI is the only way that we get to any of this at scale. And the good news is AI is happening like crazy across HR technology and workforce technology. There are at least 250 different AI, usually point solutions that are happening all across the employee life cycle. It's really great news. AI is thriving. However, not so much in this completely horizontal platform approach that I'm describing. We've got a lot of really great individual solutions happening across the board. So when we look at what AI has to do or can do in this particular case, and we start thinking about, if we have that level of talent intelligence, we're going to be able to reduce bias in hiring. We're going to have a better candidate to work match. We're going to extend career pathing in the organization. We're going to reinvent job descriptions. Imagine when you can have the AI actually write the job description. I know that'll freak some of you out, but that will be better than the job description you can write because it will be based on actual data, not the things that you kind of think you know about that role. Upskilling and reskilling strategies we've been talking about today, closing the skills gap, yes, creating a total talent vision and plan, ultimately leading to organizational agility and resiliency. And these are means in many cases. This is the end. Because when the organization is more agile, you have higher engagement, higher retention, higher quality of hire, lower time to productivity. You have less time to fill open roles. Basically all the talent-related things that you want, including higher diversity. Now, I'm making it sound like this is easy, and it's nirvana, it's going to be amazing, and I am kind of excited about it. But if it depends this much on AI, are we ready? Let's think about that question a little bit. Because if we're going to be in this position where we need our organizational abilities and our agility and our employee experience to be improved in all the ways that I've already discussed, and all these kinds of organizations are already saying, yes, we want this, we're going to move in that direction, mostly on a talent acquisition side for now, but gradually moving across all of the HR functions that I've been talking about. Okay, great. But is HR ready for that? And the answer, you'd love it to be yes. I think you have a sense I'm going to say no. The answer, though, if it were yes, it would be, hey, we've surveyed people in organizations across the world who are using AI, and we've asked them whether it's positive, negative, or neutral, and the answer is it's incredibly positive, 74% in this recent global survey that we conducted. Very little negative. That means everything's great. That means HR is probably just great at AI, knows exactly how to do this, knows exactly how to develop and implement and deploy. And the answer is no, actually. So when we ask HR executives what it is they have confidence in their teams about, HR compliance, why 81%? It starts to get down to talent acquisition, development strategies. It's more in the middling mark. But as soon as you hit technology, data analytics, automation, and AI gets down to 19%. This is actually a very weak point for our industry. Now, the good news is, if you're in HR and you're here and you're watching, whichever camera you're on, you already know that you have to improve this. And maybe you already have higher confidence in your organization. And actually, if you already have higher confidence in this in your organization's AI abilities in HR, this is your advantage. Because there are people out there who are just looking at this and scratching their heads and say, I don't know what we're going to do about that. And you're not. So AI is key to achieving these kinds of benefits at scale because it is capable of being dynamic, not static, because it's going to be assistive. And that largely means it's going to do a lot of the work on its own. You don't have to babysit it completely. You don't have to re-enter everything constantly. You remember in the old days when we said data science was the future and all these kids came out of college, hey, I'm a data scientist, and they got hired, and the first thing they did was spend all day cleaning spreadsheets. We don't want that to happen. This needs to be, and AI is very, very good at making sure that doesn't happen. Needs to then get to a point where it's intelligent and curious. I'm starting to describe it as if it has human characteristics. And unlimited by bias. So that's not a human characteristic. But what we're looking at really is we are on certain tracks. We're on this HR compliance track. And when someone says, well, we need to use AI, it's like, oh, well, that's that track over there, or I don't even know if there's a track over there, I don't know what to do. The AI actually forces us off the track because it will account for data that we haven't thought to account for. It will identify opportunities that we never would have considered. And the more that it does, and the more, I'm not going to say compliance is not important. It is incredibly important. But the amount of love that we give it compared to the amount of love that we're going to need to give these AI-driven talent intelligence platform decisions, we're going to have to rebalance that a little bit. So all I'm saying so far is this assumes we only want to do what we've done in the past, just better. And the thing we know about this is if we do it right, there is a whole future of work, a future of jobs, a future of employee experience that depends on this talent intelligence. So we can't even unlock until we get quite a ways down this path. This kind of burstable team composition, the internal plus external gigging that we're talking about and aspiring to. Because we have a clear understanding of skills, we have a clear understanding of the human motivations aligned with those skills, and we can transparently connect the employee and the executive and help out that manager who, let's face it, is in over their heads. That's the future of work that we're working on. And I hope you all join us in that future. Thank you so much for letting me be here today.